Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with another episode of Total Breakdown from the finals of the Minions of Fortune tournament. This is the fourth in a best of 5 with Ondjage in the lead 2-1. Make sure you watch the previous battles to catch the back and forth. As a reminder, make sure you check out Clan Community and sign up for their latest tournament in which you can actually win Total War Warhammer 2. I'm leaving a link in the description below. It's a long format tournament, so time zones don't matter either. Also a reminder that in this tournament, players lock in their factions at the beginning and are forced to adapt to each opponent with composition during a set. An Orc War Boss is back in the air, leading the Greenskins with Foe Seeker, Stand Your Ground, Wah, a Potion of Foolhardiness, and a Potion of Toughness. His Night Goblin Shaman comes in with Sneaky Stealin', Itchy Nuisance, Gorkle Fixit, and a Scroll of Power, while the Goblin Big Boss is once more atop his Wolf. The infantry contingent is much smaller this time, with 3 units of goblins, 1 unit of savage orcs, the 8 peak loonies, and a unit of savage orc biggins. There are now 2 goblin wolf riders, hoping to counter a large number of outriders by chasing them down, and we've also got 2 units of forest goblin spider riders working with orc boar boy biggins. Mogreb's mangy marauders will provide armor-piercing ranged fire with the ability to keep safe, while the 3 units of trolls bring in a good deal of armor-piercing damage. Ranking them up to rank 2 also helps counter their low leadership. The Empire is led by a General of the Empire in the air with Blood Roar, Foe Seeker, and a Potion of Toughness. The Bright Wizard comes in with Arcane Conduit, Kindle Flame, Cascading Fire Cloak, Flaming Sword of Ruin, and a Scroll of Shielding, while the Warrior Priest marches in with Benediction, a Scroll of Shielding, and Shield of Faith. Back to a more standard army, there are 3 units of Spearmen providing some anti-large support in the form of infantry, while the Tattersouls are an unbreakable unit supporting the 4 Greatswords. The Knights of the Blazing Sun ride in with the Royal Altdorf Griffites to provide cavalry support, while the Outriders with grenade launchers will continue to look for infantry clumps to devastate. It seems as though the Empire predicted the presence of trolls on the battlefield, as Kindle Flame and Sword of Ruin will work amazingly against units with regeneration, such as trolls, and the Knights of the Blazing Sun will cause a tremendous amount of damage to begin with, and will get further assistance with the buffs and debuffs on the field. Let's see how those predictions play out. Alright, as always, we start with a conversation about deployment, and you'll see right off the bat the Greenskins taking advantage of Vanguard deployment to get some scouting information, as we have the Goblin Wolf Riders on either side of this little ridge here, so making sure they're immediately able to tell what the Empire is up to. Meanwhile, back here, you'll see we do have the Forest Goblin Spider Riders as well as Mogreb's Mangy Marauders up front, able to conquer the top of this ridge immediately and open shots off from the beginning or chase away any incoming threatening units with the Forest Goblin Spider Riders. Right behind them, we do have the line of infantry, the Savage Orcs on this side, Savage Orc Biggins on this side, and the center consisting of the Goblins as well as the 8 peak loonies. Right behind that center, we do have all 3 units of trolls, and these guys obviously able to dive in after the front lines, do engage to bring in that extra hurt, that armor-piercing damage, and, well, cause a serious amount of pain. Up in the air right behind them, the Orc War Boss, and of course we do have the Goblin Big Boss in that center position as well, while the Orc Boar Boy Biggins are on either flank, again, able to shut down any flanking maneuvers, able to push in from the sides, get some action from all directions. Meanwhile, you'll see already the Empire, as it's pushing forward, we've got the Goblin Wolf Riders pushing in from the sides as well. So let's take a look at the Empire really quickly. We do have the General of the Empire, as I said, pushing up forward to get some scouting done, while we do have the Royal Altdorf Griffites on this side and the Knights of the Blazing Sun on this side to get some early hits in and to conquer that ridge as quickly as possible. The line consists of all of these great swords, of course, up at the front, while the Spearmen cover the back, as well as the Tattersouls, again, protecting themselves from any Vanguard deployment, any sort of clever moves from the beginning, flanking maneuvers, charges from the rears. These Spearmen will be able to respond, while the Warrior Priest you'll see up here providing support, as well as the Bright Wizard. Let's get the battle started right away. The General of the Empire, as he's pushing forward to get some scouting done, the Mogreb's Mangy Marauders get a couple of shots in on the General, and now turning their attention towards these Outriders with grenade launchers, and the Outriders with grenade launchers responding as well. They're willing to get some shots off into, you'll see Mogreb's Mangy Marauders not doing too much damage, a little bit of damage there, but forcing them to pull back. Meanwhile, over here on the right side, you'll see the Forest Goblin Spider Riders charging to the Royal Altdorf Griffites, and while the Forest Goblin Spider Riders will not win that engagement, the poison damage is going to keep the Royal Altdorf Griffites in place and give the Orc Boar Boy Biggins and the Savage Orc Biggins enough time to close that gap. So while initially it may have seemed like a good engagement for the Royal Altdorf Griffites, the planning there from the Greenskins was quite clever, because you'll see the Savage Orc Biggins and the Orc Boar Boy Biggins without an issue able to close that gap now, as poison damage keeps these guys slow and keeps them lagging behind, and there you have it. The gap is closed, and these Royal Altdorf Griffites now are going to have a terrible time. Meanwhile, as you'll see, the Mogreb's Mangy Marauders are opening shots off at the Greatswords, just trying to get some of that damage in nice and early. You'll see the Goblin Wolf Riders also coming in from the sides, coming in for their rear charges, their side charges. So great early maneuvering there, great early movement, making sure that their Vanguard deployment is used to full effect. These guys are planning a rear charge to hold these Royal Altar of Gryphites in place and potentially break some of these spearmen before they're able to cause too much hurt to the Orc Boar Biggins and the Forest Goblin Spider Riders. That is also a good move, I must mention, bringing the spearmen here right away, responding immediately to this very threatening set of units. Of course, the Savage Orc Biggins aren't going to care so much about spearmen, but the Orc Boar Biggins and the Forest Goblin Spider Riders most certainly will. And you'll see as the centers sort of push up towards each other, trying to rush the top of the ridge here, you'll see the Savage Orcs on this side being charged down by the Knights of the Blazing Sun. And we're going to get a beautiful charge here as we see these Savage Orcs catch some serious air, a lot of height on those tosses. Very impressive. This is probably the closest an orc has come to flying, causing a tremendous amount of damage with that initial charge. Of course, because of Kindle Flame, these guys are susceptible to fire damage. The Knights of the Blazing Sun naturally cause fire damage, so able to cause a decent amount of hurt right from the beginning. Orc Boar Biggins coming in to respond immediately as well to try and shut down the Knights of the Blazing Sun, but very quickly you'll see that left flank, as seen from the Greenskins, is going to go the way of the Knights of the Blazing Sun and the Empire in general. Meanwhile, on the right flank over here, a bit of stagnation as the spearmen here are able to cause some damage to the Orc Boar Biggins and the Forest Goblin Spider Riders. We do have that rear charge coming in from the Goblin Wolf Riders there. Some of them do get bogged down by the Royal Altar of Gryphites, but nonetheless they're causing some pain, especially some morale damage. But the rest are trying to get into those spearmen to try and scare them off as well. Meanwhile, back here we do have these Goblin Wolf Riders sort of relaxing back there, not willing to engage just yet. They should have been pushed up against these Tattersouls over here, or pushed down here to get some hurt into the Great Swords, maybe try and get them to break, but we do have the Goblins pushing them from the side, again just trying to cause some morale damage. It would have been nice to see these Trolls pull down here as well, rather than be pushed into the center, but you will see in the center the Goblin Big Boss, I think, chasing after the Bright Wizard, while the Trolls as well trying to shut down the Bright Wizard nice and early. Great Swords as well here facing off against the Trolls, a very precarious situation for them to be in, while in the center we have the Forest Goblin Spider Riders and Trolls facing off against the Spearmen and the Great Swords over here as well. So a tough time for the Empire in the center here, and on the left at the same time you'll see the Empire is very slowly but surely coming out on top. The General of the Empire does dive into the center here, get some damage into the Forest Goblin Spider Riders, and we do have the Flaming Sword of Ruin going down just to make sure that these Trolls are eating as much damage as possible. They are susceptible to fire to begin with, but at this point also the Forest Goblin Spider Riders with Kindle Flame, they are going to take some extra damage from that from fiery attacks. We also, of course, as a result of the cast, the General of the Empire is bringing a lot of pain through with his fire damage capabilities. And meanwhile over here you'll see as the Tattersouls dive into combat against the Savage Orcs and the Orc Boar Biggins, they're going to cause a lot of pain, and because they're unbreakable, they're not really worried about anything going on over here. They will fight to the finish. Meanwhile, Mogreb's Mangy Marauders continue to try and get some shots off, while over here you'll see the Goblin Wolf Riders try to dive into these Outriders to prevent their fire from going in, but the Spearmen push in and intercept to make sure that these Goblin Wolf Riders aren't able to actually shut down the Outriders. Some of them are still able to get through and cause some damage, but overall well played there with the Spearmen. Unfortunately, they were pushed out of formation to intercept the Goblin Wolf Riders, so they weren't braced against that charge. Meanwhile, over here on the right flank, you'll see the Royal Altar of Gryphites completely taken care of, and now it's just these Spearmen, so the Orc Boar Biggins and the Forest Goblin Spider Riders need to be pulled away, and the Goblins, as well as the Savage Orc Biggins, as well as the Orc War Boss, can cause all the damage necessary. Again, it would have been nice to see these Trolls be pulled back to hit these Great Swords to quickly win this right flank, because you'll see this left flank is very quickly going in favor of the Empire. Meanwhile, in the center, we do have Itchy Nuisance going down, trying to prevent the quantity of damage coming through and reduce the consistency of the damage as well. And you'll see, though, a little too late, because the Forest Goblin Spider Riders and the Goblins over here taking all that damage, they are getting terrified away as well. The Orc War Boss now trying to pull back and trying to respond to this situation over here, while the Tattersouls as well as the Knights of the Blazing Sun have very quickly taken care of this left flank. You'll see the Orc War Boss does dive in, hits the Bright Wizard there, trying to get that damage in, and over here we do have some shatters. Some of these units are completely taken care of. Mogreb's Mangy Marauders as well, pulling back now, trying to get into some safety as these Great Swords are pulling away from the central engagement. The General of the Empire diving in as well, trying to hurt these Trolls over here, pushing through, needing to get a lot of work done, and over here the Orc War Boss is pulling away from that engagement, trying to get away from the General of the Empire, again needing to pull down here, try and get some damage and some morale damage. And meanwhile over here, as that's happening, as the Orc War Boss is responding to the situation, you'll see over here we've got the Knights of the Blazing Sun chasing after these Trolls, trying to shut them down once and forever, but you'll see the Orc Boar Biggins made to turn around. Very quick response time. They're turning around and trying to intercept the Knights of the Blazing Sun, prevent their charge from hitting these Trolls too hard, and also pulling Mogreb's Mangy Marauders back. So great management there, spotting that charge coming in. The Orc Boar Biggins sent in to intercept. The Trolls continue to rout relatively safely, while Mogreb's Mangy Marauders as well pulled back into some relative safety. But the General of the Empire is looming, is very threatening, and of course keeping that leadership damage coming in with Blood Roar, able to dive in and cause a fair amount of damage as well to units such as Mogreb's Pogrub's Meiji Marauders. We do, of course, have the Forest Goblin Spider Riders right here, though, so it's a little risky because with that poison coming in, and with the Orc Boar Boy Biggins right there, it could be pretty dangerous for the General of the Empire. Meanwhile, over here, you'll see the Orc War Boss causing a great deal of damage in this area. You'll see the Spearmen here are terrified off, so great movement there, making sure that these guys have to fall back. And meanwhile, over here, you'll see the Goblin Wolf Riders were sort of pulled away and kept into some safety, while the other unit of Goblin Wolf Riders have largely been taken care of. As you'll see, they're riding away over there. They took a lot of damage in that engagement against the Spearmen. Back in the center, you'll see the Trolls are having a field day. They've got the chance to engage these great swords, and they will do a lot of damage. Obviously, the Spearmen are a little threatening to them, but these massive clumps of infantry are quite beneficial to the Trolls because they have their massive clumps that they can hit around with. Their armor piercing, they're getting a lot of damage through, and despite Kindle Flame, without the Sword of Ruin, it's not like these units are causing any fire damage. Scroll of Shielding as well down on some of these great swords here, trying to keep them alive, but that will run out pretty soon. Meanwhile, the Outriders with grenade launchers sort of diving into melee. It looks like they should have been popping their grenades, sort of come into the rear here and try to throw some grenades in here, or launch some grenades into this clump over here, get a decent amount of damage in, because you'll see this side, this right flank now very quickly going in favor of the Greenskins, of course, with the Orc War Boss right in there for support as well. Meanwhile, you'll see this unit of Knights of the Blazing Sun very quickly taken care of. They got into a very precarious engagement there, and between the Forest Goblin Spider Riders and the Orc Boar Boy Biggins, they did not stand a chance. So one of the more valuable units on the field now taken care of out of the hands of the Empire. In the center, you'll see the General of the Empire trying to provide some support, trying to pick off various units, but the Goblin Big Boss sees this opportunity, dives in to hit the General of the Empire, and does a tremendous amount of damage there. And you'll see over here as well, Arcane Conduit goes down on the Bright Wizard. Extremely important that the Flaming Sword of Ruin does come into action as quickly as possible, and now the Orc War Boss as well, diving in here, trying to provide some support. That leadership support with his mere presence, of course, will make a big difference in that central engagement. Now charging into the General of the Empire as well, trying to get some hurt in, trying to finish off the General of the Empire to try and make sure that that leadership damage does trickle through, because in the center you will see the Greenskins are having some trouble, while on the right here, of course, with the Savage Orc Biggins coming in from the rear of the Great Swords, these guys are going to be taken care of. It would have been nice to see the Forest Goblin Spider Riders push in either back here or into this unit of Tattersouls as well, just to cause that damage. Instead, they dive into the center, trying to provide some support to these Goblins. Trolls coming in as well, of course, causing a tremendous amount of damage, and we do have the Flaming Sword of Ruin once more, so that's a very dangerous situation. Meanwhile, the General of the Empire does dive in, chasing after the Orc War Boss, but the Orc War Boss pops the Potion of Foolhardiness and the Potion of Toughness, while the General of the Empire is only able to pop the Potion of Toughness there. You see, you'll have it there. Melee defense and armor right up, as well as the Flaming Sword of Ruin, though it does travel away over here with that unit of Great Swords, so the General of the Empire, is in a very dangerous situation, as the Goblin Big Boss as well as the Orc War Boss are able to just surround him and cause a tremendous amount of damage there. Saying tremendous a lot, but that's really what's going on here. The General of the Empire, Potion of Toughness, slowly healing him ever so slightly, but getting clumped down now by the Orc Boar Boy Biggins as well, so a very dangerous place to be. Bad move there, sort of pulling this way, and now you'll see the General of the Empire with Gorkle. Well, no need to finish that sentence. We have a Pyrrhic victory for the Greenskins. But at the end there, Gorkle fixed it, keeping the General of the Empire in place to make sure he can be killed off. Unnecessary ultimately, because despite quickly winning that left flank, as seen from the Greenskins' perspective, the Empire was simply unable to maximize its potential in other parts of the battlefield. By allowing the Trolls to directly engage massive clumps of infantry, the Empire soldiers were quickly being dispatched of. Great swords were wasted on Trolls when Spears, Knights of the Blazing Sun, and the Royal Altdorf Griffites should have focused on them instead. Great swords had plenty of other targets they could have focused down on. The Greenskins showed good use of magic and maneuverability on the battlefield, allowing them to quickly take the day. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content, and keep sending in those battle replays. I think it's one of the best ways to learn, and I love highlighting such great battles from the community. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.